So I often get, I don't know what your answer is, I often get asked, teacher candidates and folks looking for a position, if it's okay to contact the principal. I have an answer, but I want to see what you guys say. Because I have my view. Is it okay to contact the principal?
For me, it's tough because it depends on the principal. I mean, I know some principals that are like, if they take the initiative and call me, absolutely. And I have some that are like, you know what, I have enough to worry about, don't call me. So that's a tough one, I don't know, because it just kind of depends.
It's the same. I mean, you know, when we have 200 applicants, if 200 people call the principal, they would be pretty annoyed, I think. But it's best maybe to have another principal who knows that person called. But
I don't know, I just want to hear their answer. My answer always is it depends on the principal, because to your point, it puts some of them off. My worldview has always been, if you'll work hard to get the job, you'll work hard once you have it. So if 200 people are bothering the principal on a job that's posted, that would be really annoying. But not all 200 people are going to do that. Be careful, right? And go visit, have a feel for the school, dress the part, look the part, and try to leave your resume with the secretary, because he or she is the keeper of employment in that school. You don't know that, right? You'll make an impression, and don't be pushy. But when I think about my secretaries, they were always screening candidates, and I did. Well, someone came in, what'd you think? And then they ended up in the interview pile. Okay, but make sure you've taken care of all the online stuff. So I just wanted to introduce myself. I've applied online. Everything's accurate. Here's a hard copy of my resume, cover letter. If the principal's available, I'd love to see him. If not, thank you very much. Then be on your way. But it does depend. But I've hired more folks that have come into the building to make that impression than not. But the secretaries are also the screeners. Because if it's they don't make the list. If it's we had a great candidate come in, they need to come in. So it depends. But be assertive. Separate yourself from the rest of the group.
I'd say you're probably safer if you student taught there and you know the principal. So you can say, hey, remember me? Whereas if it's a complete stranger of a principal, then
have a connection. Right? You work hard to get the job. You work hard once you get it. That's true.
You know, later actually you'll have another gathering before you apply for student teaching, and the UNC works with every single school all over Colorado, all over the country, and all over the world now. And we do have a list actually of the schools that would allow you to call the principal, that would not allow you to call the principal. And you will be told about, for which districts you are supposed to do it, for which districts you are absolutely forbidden from doing it. So you will know. We have a list.
I'd like to see that list.
Big round of applause for our folks. So, among the roles, I just always like this thing because it leads me into one of the next things to think about. Among my roles has been a hiring manager and as a principal and department chair. You're in a bridge building process. Be careful if you ever choose to burn a bridge, okay? Because everybody in education seems to know everybody else. I didn't apply or interview for my first 3 teaching jobs. They were all word of mouth. After student teaching, I started subbing, but then I got a call on a Thursday night. Somebody was desperate and said, "Can you come to work tomorrow? My son was in your student teaching class." That was my interview. 2 minutes on the phone. You are starting the interview process right now. And when you're student teaching, it's full on an interview. So stay with it. Okay, among the things you want to be thinking about also, and that's why I put that cartoon up there, similar to many professions, there are professional examinations that you must take and pass. In our field, it's called Praxis. Praxis is a national examination program put together by ETS. And depending on your area, depending on your field, you may have to take 1 or you may have to take 5 different exams. And you have to pass them. And at UNC, you have to pass your examinations before you student teach. So, talk to your advisor. Keep your GPA up. They're all content knowledge exams. So for example, in elementary education, you have to take one in math, science, social studies, and English language arts. And if you're special ed, you take all 4 of those and a special ed test. Okay, those are really, really important. So start to think about what that's about. You can go on the Praxis website. They have practice exams. Try and time those so when you take them, pass them the first time, they're not cheap. The other thing is, while I'm thinking about it, make sure when you sign up for something like Praxis that you have your scores reported to UNC. Because if they're not, and we don't know what you got, how are we going to let you out there? The other kinds of things to think about with your advisor, of course, we've already mentioned. What are the other kinds of courses, majors, minors, things that are going to enhance you and your brand out there to make you a fantastic candidate in the field? Make sure you talk to your advisors. Our 2 elementary advisors are up there in the back, Liz and Jamie. So make sure you pay close attention. And if you have specific questions about programs, find out who the program coordinator is and make an appointment with them. Worst case scenario, you can come and see me and I'll say, oh, I don't know, and I'll send you to the person who does. A little science joke. So before you can student teach, you have to be successful at every part of your program. And you have to keep your GPA up. As part of your packet, your very first packet, except elementary education, I'll get to that one in a minute, you're going to have a major content approval form signed by your advisor. And your advisor's not going to sign that form unless your GPA meets muster. They may say, you know what, I'm going to wait till I see how you do this semester before I sign it. That's totally cool. I can take packets, as late as your advisor wants to hold it off. But that's a very, very important part. Like Dr. Wong said, we don't send slackers out into the field. You represent us, and you go out into the field to take care of somebody else's children. What do parents want? 2 things. Anybody have an idea? They're going to look at you and they're going to say one of 2, they're going to ask you to do 2 things. One is, don't hurt my child. P.S. Don't send them home crying. And worse, don't make me cry because you sent their math homework for me to teach them. Anybody ever experienced that? Yeah, that's bad. The second one is, teach them something. Or, said another way, control the dinner time conversation. When their mom or dad says, what'd you do in school today? Make sure they're talking about you. And I mean something good. Okay? Not the inappropriate joke they heard you telling in the hall. Oh my gosh, I can't believe what Miss Smith did today. She makes this thing float in the air. Oh my gosh. Or I like reading now because Mr. Jones said it's the coolest thing in the world and I think he's cool. Control that dinner time conversation. That's another way that we principals and advisors know you're doing a good job. Because we run into the parent and they say, oh yeah, we know all about you guys because we hear about it. That's a good thing. Make sure that you complete your LACs and that every time you get a chance to review your professional dispositions, you're focused on meeting the very highest standard. Okay, is your brain almost full? And I think we've already covered the next one. Okay, so make sure that you understand who you're dealing with, your program coordinators, your advisors, your teachers. Take very, very good care of them and your relationships with them. Be professional, be respectful, and be a top quality candidate. Okay, so what happens when you have an issue? Have you ever had an issue with a professor? Did you ever get a grade that you thought wasn't appropriate? So what do? Well, you can't go and say, I really worked hard on this, I think I deserve a better grade. Yes, so what? Look at the way things are supposed to be scored, and when you have an issue, look at the rubrics, look at how it's supposed to be scored, have a conversation with the professor that's not full of negative emotion. Remember, the only people that can change grades are the professors who give them. You can't come into my office or Dr. Wong's and say, I think I deserve an A, and we'll say, congratulations for thinking you deserve an A. Because that won't cut it. But you're building bridges with your professors, with your colleagues, with your friends. Oh my gosh, that person you had to do a project with in your reading class. You might wind up in the same school with them, and you might be asked to do a project together. Well, maybe you don't like them. Maybe they drink the wrong flavored coffee. You still have to work together, right? And there's one for the science teachers, right? All right, now everywhere you go, one of the things schools have to assure anymore is that you're safe and not going to hurt children. Everywhere you go, you should expect to be background checked. And this is really, really important. As educators, we tend to feel people make mistakes, like Chris said, you want to fail forward, right? But robbing a bank is not a good example of failing forward. Most of the world thinks that if you've committed a crime, you're likely to do it again. And that's the world we live in. So if you have a misdemeanor conviction, pay close attention. You must make an appointment with me immediately, starting tomorrow. And we'll have a conversation about it and your future concerning teaching it with relation to that misdemeanor. If you have a felony, we need to have a serious conversation about your new major. I'm serious. We just can't do that. Because parents won't accept it. That first thing, what do they want? Don't hurt my kid. Teach them something, don't hurt them. Every school you go to, you should expect to be fingerprint background checked, and they'll check you with CBI and the FBI. Don't ever fib about something, be upfront about it. Okay? And we did a survey of the school districts that were represented at a professional meeting last spring, and about half of them will pay for that background check. Well, that means half of them are going to pass that cost on to you, and oh, by the way, it's $38.50, payable only by money order. And then when you get to the end of the process and you go for your license, you're going to have to do it again. The reason for that is nobody can share that information with anybody else. Now, in your packet, you have an oath and consent form. That is the only form of background check I'm going to do with you, where you're going to be upfront and tell me what is going on. If you have never been convicted of a misdemeanor or a felony, you just check no, and that's the end of it. And if you have, you check yes, write down what they are, we make an appointment, we go through the whole thing, you're probably okay. If you have an MIP, minor in possession, you're going to be okay. And it's on your record. Now, you might wonder, how would I know what's on my record? Because I don't remember that weekend. Well, if you're really worried about it, go out on the Colorado Bureau of Investigation website, and for $8, they'll do an instant background check for you. And you can find out every time you've been arrested and every time you've been convicted and what they did. Okay? So if you're worried about it, go background check yourself. All right? But it's super important. It's possible that if you went did practica in 3 different places and then student taught, you might have to do 5 background checks before you even had your license. It's super important that we're able to assure people that you're safe to put in front of children.
Mr. Moore,
Yes,
is that option for drug screens, or is that like more of a criminal background check?
these are criminal background checks. Yeah, we don't do drug screens that way. They're not reported the same way. I was told yesterday by a school district person that even if it happened before you were 18, CBI is going to unseal some of those records because it's a school issue. Okay? And that's for the history people. Okay, so to pass our lovely 0 credit EDFE 110, you have a checkpoints packet. There is a, in the Canvas shell for 110, there is a link to the packet if you don't already have it. You're going to print out everything that's on it, including the checklist, and put it together as a packet. And you're going to get things signed. Sign them yourselves. I had somebody who signed one the other day in cartoons. Please be professional about it. Okay, I think it's lovely if you can draw butterflies into your name. That's not part of a signature, right? If you're an elementary candidate, you have an elementary education planning form in there in place of a major content approval form. Make sure you fill that whole thing out completely. You will probably need to talk to an advisor to find out what your program plan is to fill that out. Your advisor is very, very important to you in this program. Okay, they are one of the gatekeepers, literally. They can stop you dead if you don't follow the rules and don't do a good job. So take care of that relationship. It's super important. Unlike this teacher, we're not doing a download podcast, but you'll notice this meeting is being filmed. So I'm going to post the links to this tape and the PowerPoint without the cartoons. All that stuff will also be out there on the Canvas shell in case there's something you missed or weren't quite sure about or you really want to dig into that. So now what? Get everything signed. If you have a misdemeanor or a felony, make an appointment with me by email. Come see me. I'll help take care of you, I promise. Your packet, there's an error here. Anybody spot why October 1's probably not the best choice?
Sunday.
Yeah, it's Sunday, October 2nd. Okay? You're going to bring those to McKee 216. The students or secretaries up front will check your packet over, make sure it's complete. Make sure you sign everything that needs to be signed, or get your advisor's input every place you need that. You will not need Praxis yet, but by the time you get into EDFE 120, which is the middle step, we're going to want you to start taking your Praxis. So start thinking about that. Starting now, you are professionals. Childhood is over, sorry. You're adults now. Because you're in charge of somebody else's children, the most precious things in their lives. So think of yourself that way. All right? All right, anybody's head tilting? Questions? Yes?